I silently endured my husband's selective blindness for years, then quietly reclaimed our shared fortune and ended our marriage without a public scene. For the last 7 days, I've been living in a museum. Everything is in its place. The quartz countertops are sterile, wiped clean of any crumbs or smudges. The hardwood floors gleam, reflecting the cold gray light of late autumn. The charcoal gray sofa has its throw pillows, perfectly fluffed, precisely angled. This house, the one I poured my soul and my savings into, has become a beautiful silent tomb. And I'm the ghost haunting it. My husband Alex moves through these rooms and seems to notice nothing. At 36, he has perfected the art of selective blindness. He doesn't see the tension coiled in my shoulders or the way I no longer meet his eyes. He just sees that dinner is on the table at 6:30, the bills are paid, and the life he's grown accustomed to continues uninterrupted. He has no idea that the foundations of that life have already been demolished, and all that's left is a facade waiting for one final push to collapse into dust. 7 days ago, I completed the final wire transfer. I watched the confirmation screen flash on my laptop, the numbers stark and final. $850,000, the entire liquid fortune of our 5-year marriage, vanished from our joint accounts and reappeared safe and sound in an irrevocable trust controlled by my parents. The Wood family trust. My family. The transfer was the point of no return. Now there is only the waiting. Alex is in the living room watching some sports recap, laughing at a fumbled play. The sound feels alien in the crushing silence of my own mind. He thinks this is just another Tuesday. He has no idea that in a few more days I'm going to serve him divorce papers and walk out of this museum forever. He has no idea that when he calls his mother for help, they'll discover that the bank account they all viewed as their personal piggy bank is nothing but an empty shell. It might sound cold, calculated, and it is, but 5 years of relentless, soul-crushing emotional warfare will do that to a person. It forces you to become a strategist. It teaches you to plan your exit with the precision of a military operation. Because when your partner refuses to be your ally, you learn to become your own army. The memory that plays on a loop in my head, the one that fuels my resolve every time a flicker of doubt creeps in, isn't some huge dramatic explosion. It's a dinner party. Just a simple, quiet dinner party from a few months ago. It was a Friday night. I'd spent the afternoon making a beef bourguignon, the kind that takes hours simmering until the meat is so tender it falls apart with a fork. The whole house smelled of wine and herbs and warmth. It was the kind of meal you make for people you love, an offering of time and effort. His mother, Eleanor, and her wife, Brenda, arrived right on time. At 60, Eleanor still carried herself with the unshakable authority of a high school principal who suspected every student was cheating. Her wife, Brenda, 2 years younger at 58, was her loyal lieutenant, always ready to echo a sentiment or sharpen a criticism. They came in, and the warmth in the house immediately seemed to recede. Eleanor scanned the dining room, her eyes lingering for a moment on the new art I'd hung on the wall. "Oh," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "That's a bold choice, Jonathan." Brenda chimed in, right on cue. "It's very modern. Not what we would have picked, but it's your house. My house." The dig was subtle, but it landed. This house that I found that I made the down payment on with my own premarital savings 8 years ago that I furnished and decorated. But in their eyes, I was just a guest who had overstayed his welcome. We sat down to eat. I served the bourguignon, spooning it over creamy mashed potatoes. Alex, my dear conflict-averse Alex, smiled his placating smile. "This looks amazing, John. You've outdone yourself." Eleanor took a small, deliberate bite. She chewed slowly, her expression unreadable. Then she dabbed her lips with her napkin. "It's nice," she declared. "A little heavy on the thyme, perhaps, and the beef is a bit dry. Did you sear it properly first, dear? It's a common mistake for home cooks." I felt the familiar heat rise in my cheeks. I had spent hours on this dish. It was perfect. The beef was meltingly tender. But that didn't matter. The point wasn't the food. The point was to remind me of my place. To remind me that nothing I ever did would be quite good enough. Brenda patted my hand from across the table. "Don't you worry, Jonathan. Eleanor knows her food. She's just trying to help you improve. We know you didn't grow up with this sort of thing." Another jab. My family wasn't poor, not by a long shot, but we were simple, middle-class people. We didn't have a portfolio of passive-aggressive insults passed down through generations. We just said what we meant. To them, that made me unsophisticated, unworthy. I looked at Alex. I pleaded with my eyes. "Say something, anything. Defend me. Tell your mother her comment was rude. Tell her wife to stop patronizing me. He just cleared his throat and picked up his wine glass. So, Mom, did you see the game last weekend? What a finish, right? And just like that, the moment was gone. The subject was changed. The insults were swept under the rug, and I was left sitting there choking on my perfect dry beef, feeling utterly and completely alone. The message was clear. My comfort, my feelings, my dignity, they were all expendable for the sake of avoiding an awkward conversation. The rest of the dinner was a masterclass in psychological jousting. My career was so demanding, which was their code for you work too much and neglect our son. The vacation I was planning for Alex and me was a little extravagant, which meant how dare you spend your money on yourselves instead of on us. Every compliment was a veiled criticism. Every question was an interrogation. And through it all, Alex played the smiling, oblivious host. He refilled their wine glasses. He laughed at their bland jokes. He was a perfect son. He was a terrible husband. When they finally left, the silence they left behind was louder than their chatter. The front door clicked shut, and the mask of civility I had been wearing for 3 hours finally cracked. Alex started gathering the plates, humming to himself. "Don't," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Just don't act like that didn't happen." He stopped his back to me. He sighed a long, weary sound. "John, come on. Let's not do this tonight." "Do what, Alex?" "Do what? Acknowledge that your mother and her wife spent the entire evening systematically insulting every single thing about me, from my cooking to my taste in art to my family background." He turned around, and his face was a portrait of practiced exasperation. "They don't mean it like that. You're being too sensitive. That's just how they are. It's their way." Their way, I could feel my voice starting to tremble, a mix of rage and heartbreak. "Their way is cruel, Alex. It's demeaning. And you just sit there, you smile, and you change the subject to sports. You leave me completely exposed every single time." He threw his hands up in the air. "What do you want me to do, Jonathan? Start a huge fight, ruin the whole night? They're my family. I'm caught in the middle here." "No, you're not," I said, the words coming out colder than I intended. "You're not in the middle. You're on their side. A partner is supposed to stand with you. They're supposed to be your shield. You just hand them the stones to throw." His face hardened. The brief flicker of guilt was replaced by defensiveness. "You're being dramatic. It wasn't that bad. Honestly, can't you just let it go for the sake of peace?" For the sake of peace. Those 5 words were the nail in the coffin of our marriage. Because what he meant by peace was his peace, his comfort, his desire to avoid confrontation. My peace didn't matter. My emotional well-being was a fair price to pay for his quiet life. In that moment, looking at the man I had loved and built a life with for the past 5 years, I realized he would always choose their comfort over my pain. He would always choose to sacrifice me on the altar of a quiet family dinner. I didn't say another word. I just turned and walked away, heading to my home office. The argument was over. Not just for the night, but forever. There was nothing left to say. He had shown me who he was, and I finally believed him. I closed the office door behind me, the click of the latch sounding like a final, definitive judgment. I sat in my leather chair, the silence of the room a welcome relief. The smell of the beef bourguignon still lingered in the house, a mocking reminder of the effort I had wasted. My hands were shaking slightly as I pulled out my phone. I didn't look at social media. I didn't text a friend. I opened my email and scrolled down, my thumb hovering over a message from a few days prior. The subject line was simple: trust establishment documents. I opened it and read it again for the 10th time. Everything was in order. The accounts were set up. The legal framework was in place. All it needed was my action. For 5 years I had tried. I had hosted the dinners. I had absorbed the insults. I had smiled through the condescension. I had begged my husband to see me, to defend me, to be my partner. And for 5 years he had failed. Sitting there in the dark, the glow of the phone illuminating my face, the hurt began to recede. It was replaced by something else. Something cold and hard and clear. It was resolve. If he wouldn't be my shield, I would be my own sword. If he wouldn't protect the life we had built, then I would protect the life I had earned. I navigated to my banking app. My finger hovered over the screen. The plan was no longer just a fantasy, a desperate daydream for escaping the constant barrage of disrespect. It was real. It was ready. And as I sat there alone in my office, listening to my husband cleaning up the remnants of the dinner party, where I had been served up as the main course, a strange, grim satisfaction settled over me. The war was already lost, but my own liberation was just about to begin. That night in my office wasn't the moment the decision was made. It was just the moment I pulled the trigger. The bullet had been chambered 2 weeks earlier on a perfectly ordinary Sunday afternoon. The kind of lazy, sun-drenched afternoon that's supposed to be filled with contentment, not the quiet, soul-crushing realization that your entire marriage is a lie. Alex and I were in the living room, the one with the big bay window that I'd fallen in love with when I first bought the house years before I'd even met him. He was scrolling through his phone and I was reading a book enjoying the rare moment of peace. But peace in our house was always a fragile, temporary thing. It was a shallow pond, and I knew that Eleanor and Brenda were the boulders that would inevitably be tossed into it, sending ripples of chaos and anxiety through my life. The doorbell rang, and just like that, the pond was shattered. It was them, of course. They never called ahead. They operated under the assumption that their presence was a gift, a welcome surprise when in reality, it felt more like an audit. They'd walk in and their eyes would sweep across the room, silently judging the cleanliness, the decor, the very air we breathed. Alex, to his credit, looked momentarily annoyed before his face settled back into its usual mask of placid welcome. "Mom, Brenda, what are you guys doing here?" He gave them both hugs as they breezed past him into the house, their expensive perfumes warring with the simple scent of lemon polish and old books. "We were just in the neighborhood," Eleanor said, which was a lie. "They lived 45 minutes away. We wanted to discuss something with you boys." My stomach tightened. Discuss was their code word for demand. I put a bookmark in my novel and set it aside, schooling my face into a neutral expression. It was a look I had perfected over 5 long years. The look of a man trying to be polite while being emotionally waterboarded. They settled onto the sofa opposite me, arranging themselves like a 2-person tribunal. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, was 60, but carried herself with the unshakable authority of a queen. Her wife, Brenda, 2 years her junior, was her loyal and often more venomous prime minister. They were a unit, a closed circuit of judgment and entitlement, and I was always on the outside. So Eleanor began getting right to it. "Brenda and I have decided it's time we took a proper vacation. We've worked hard our whole lives." This was another fabrication. Eleanor hadn't worked in 20 years, and Brenda's work was managing their small inherited stock portfolio with the help of a professional. My work, my 60-hour weeks as a financial strategist, was what funded the life they seemed to think they were owed a piece of. "That's great," Alex said, ever the cheerleader. "Where are you thinking of going?" Brenda beamed a shark-like smile that never reached her eyes. "A 14-day Mediterranean cruise. Italy, Greece, Croatia. All the best ports. We found a wonderful suite with a balcony." I stayed silent. I knew what was coming. It was like watching a storm gather on the horizon. You can see the clouds darken, feel the pressure drop. You know it's going to hit. All you can do is brace yourself. "The thing is," Eleanor continued, leaning forward conspiratorially, "the deposit is due next week, and we were thinking it would be so much easier if we just handled it all out of the family accounts." There it was, the thunderclap. Alex shifted uncomfortably beside me. He knew. He knew that the family accounts was their euphemism for the joint investment portfolio I managed. The portfolio that I had built from nothing, funded almost exclusively with my salary and my bonuses. The money I had spent years carefully cultivating to secure our asterisk future. His and mine, not theirs. Well, Alex started already floundering. "We have our budget and things are a little tight after the property tax payment." Brenda waved a dismissive hand, her bracelets jangling. "Oh, don't be silly. We're not talking about your little checking account. We're talking about the real money. Jonathan just got that big bonus last month. It's perfect timing." My blood ran cold. The bonus. It was the result of a project that had nearly broken me. I'd spent 9 months working until midnight, surviving on coffee and sheer willpower to land a massive client for my firm. The bonus wasn't just money. It was a symbol of my sacrifice, my expertise, my value. And to them, it was just a convenient windfall to fund their vacation. But then Eleanor delivered the final blow. The words that would echo in my head for the next 2 weeks, fueling every secret phone call and clandestine transfer. She looked at Alex, but her words were aimed at me, a poison-tipped dart. "It's about time some of Alex's inheritance was put to good use for the people who raised him. It's family money, after all. It should benefit the whole family." Alex's inheritance. Family money. The air left my lungs. In 2 sentences, they had done it. They had completely and utterly erased me. My work, my stress, my sleepless nights, none of it existed. In their narrative, I was a ghost, a non-entity, The money I earned through my own labor and skill was magically transformed into an inheritance for their son. I wasn't a husband, a partner, or a provider. I was just the temporary custodian of their asterisk family's wealth. I could feel a tremor start in my hands. This wasn't just a passive-aggressive jab about my cooking. This wasn't a snide comment about my choice of curtains. This was a fundamental delegitimization of my entire life, my career, and my role in my own marriage. I looked at Alex. This was it. This was the moment. After 5 years of me begging him in private, of me pleading with him to see how they treated me, this was his chance. It was all laid bare in the open. The greed, the disrespect, the breathtaking entitlement. He couldn't pretend he didn't hear it. He couldn't claim it was a misunderstanding. It was a direct public assault on my dignity and our partnership. I held his gaze, and in my eyes I silently screamed at him. Asterisk, say something. Please, for the love of God, be my husband right now. Draw the line. Tell them no. Tell them it's my money, that I earned it, that they have no right. Defend me. Defend us. He saw the desperation in my eyes. I know he did. A flicker of something, guilt maybe, or fear, crossed his face. His mouth opened, and for one beautiful, heart-stopping second, I thought he was going to do it. I thought he was finally going to choose me. He took a breath. He looked from my face to his mother's expectant stare. And then he broke. He let out a short, nervous laugh. He ran a hand through his hair. Well, the bonus is, John and I had some plans for it, he stammered. Eleanor's face hardened. Plans can be changed, Alex. Family comes first. The moment was slipping away. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. Asterisk, fight for me, asterisk. I begged him with my eyes. Asterisk, fight for us. And then he said the words that sealed the end of our marriage. He turned to me, offering a weak, placating smile that was meant to soothe, but felt like a slap in the face. We can discuss it later, John, he said, his voice quiet and pleading. Let's not make a scene. Let's not make a scene. He said it in front of them. He had watched them strip me of my contribution, my identity, and my worth, and his only concern was avoiding a moment of social awkwardness. He chose to silence me rather than confront them. He chose their comfort over my dignity. He chose to protect them from a moment of unpleasantness while leaving me completely undefended and humiliated in my own home. In that instant, something inside me didn't just break, it vaporized. It turned to dust and blew away. The love I had held onto, the hope that he would one day change, the belief that our partnership was worth fighting for, all of it gone. I was utterly, completely, and devastatingly alone. I looked at the three of them on the couch, a united front, and I wasn't just on the outside looking in. I was the enemy. I was the obstacle standing between them and the money they felt they were owed. A strange, terrifying calm washed over me. The shaking in my hands stopped. The frantic pounding in my chest slowed to a steady, rhythmic beat. It was the calm of a general who has just accepted that a battle is lost and must now plan the retreat to save what's left of his army. And my army was my life's work. It was the $850,000 in that portfolio. It was my future. I didn't say a word. I simply gave a small, tight nod. I stood up from my chair. Jonathan, where are you going? Brenda asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. I looked down at the three of them, a tableau of greed and weakness. And for the first time, I didn't feel hurt or angry. I felt nothing but a profound, chilling clarity. They weren't my family. They were pirates who had boarded my ship. And my husband wasn't my partner. He was the one who had lowered the gangplank and welcomed them aboard. I need to make a call, I said, my voice even and cold. I walked out of the living room, leaving them to their plotting. I didn't go to the office. I walked straight out the back door and into the garden. I pulled out my phone, the afternoon sun glinting off the screen. I didn't call my parents. I didn't call my lawyer. Not yet. I called my financial advisor. Hey, David, I said, my voice steady. It's Jonathan Wood. I need to talk to you about setting up a trust, an irrevocable one, and I need to know how quickly we can liquidate my joint portfolio and transfer the assets. All of them. There was a pause on the other end of the line. All of them, David asked, a note of surprise in his voice. That's a major move, John. Is everything okay? I looked back through the window at my husband nodding along as his mother and her wife laid out their vacation plans, spending my money, spending my life. He looked relaxed, at peace. He had successfully avoided a scene. And I smiled, a real, genuine smile for the first time all day. It was a bitter, terrible smile, but it was a smile of absolute certainty. The plan was born. Everything I said into the phone is about to be. The war began not with a bang, but with a quiet click of a mouse. Over the next 2 weeks, I became two different people. There was the Jonathan that Alex saw, the husband who still went to work, who asked about his day, who sat across from him at the dinner table and discussed trivial things like what to watch on TV. I was a ghost haunting my own life, a perfect imitation of the man I used to be. Every smile was a strategy. Every touch was a tactic. Every shared meal was a mission to maintain the illusion of normalcy while I systematically dismantled our shared world. Then there was the real Jonathan. This Jonathan lived in the shadows. He existed in hushed 10-minute phone calls from the driver's seat of my car parked in the farthest corner of the office lot. He lived in the dim glow of my laptop screen in my home office after midnight, when the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and Alex's steady breathing from the bedroom down the hall. This Jonathan was a man possessed by a single cold purpose. My first call after speaking to David, my financial advisor, was to a lawyer my parents recommended. A woman with a reputation for being a shark, but a loyal one. I explained the situation, leaving out the raw emotion and sticking to the facts: 5 years of marriage, a significant disparity in income, a history of emotional manipulation from my in-laws, and a husband who acted as their willing accomplice. The key, she told me, her voice sharp and clear over the phone, is that the transfer must be complete before any petition for divorce is filed. The moment you file, the court issues automatic temporary restraining orders. All marital assets are frozen. You do this before it's complicated, but not impossible to defend. You move the money after you file, and a judge will tear you apart. So the timeline was set. The clock was ticking. My calls with David became a daily ritual. We broke down the $850,000 portfolio into manageable chunks. Selling off that much at once would trigger alarms. So we did it piece by piece, a careful, methodical liquidation designed to fly under the radar. Each transaction confirmation that hit my inbox felt like a small victory, another brick being laid in the wall that would soon separate my future from my past. The hardest part was coordinating with my parents. I called them one evening, my voice trembling for the first time. I explained everything: the years of insults from Eleanor and Brenda, Alex's refusal to ever stand up for me, and the final soul-crushing incident with the European cruise. I told them about my plan. I expected questions, maybe even judgment. Instead, all I heard on the other end of the line was my mother's quiet strength. "Whatever you need us to do, Jonathan," she said, her voice firm, "we're here." My father echoed her, his tone laced with a protective anger I hadn't heard in years. "It's about time you took care of yourself, son. We'll get the trust paperwork started tomorrow." Relief washed over me so powerfully my knees felt weak. They were my true family. They were my safe harbor. The Wood Family Trust wasn't just a legal entity. It was a symbol. It was me taking the life I had built and placing it into the hands of the people who had built me. Living with Alex during this time was an exercise in supreme self-control. He was oblivious, wrapped up in his own world. One night he came home excited. Eleanor had found a great deal on the cruise they wanted. "It's a 14-day trip through the Mediterranean," he said, his eyes shining. "She said we should book it before the price goes up." The old me would have argued. The old me would have felt a fresh wave of hurt. But the new me, the real me, just nodded. "That sounds nice," I said, my heart a block of ice in my chest. "You should definitely look into it." He was so happy that I was being agreeable. He had no idea I was agreeing, because I knew with absolute certainty that I wouldn't be on that cruise. I wouldn't even be in his life. The day finally came. All the assets were liquid, sitting as cash in a single holding account. It was the moment of truth. I waited until Alex was in the shower. I sat at my desk, my hands shaking, as I hovered the cursor over the confirm transfer button. A wire for $850,000 to the Wood Family Trust. This was it, the point of no return. I thought about the last 5 years, the constant chipping erosion of my self-worth, the loneliness of being in a marriage but feeling completely alone. I thought of Alex's weak smile as he told me not to make a scene. I clicked the button. A confirmation screen popped up. Transfer complete. It was done. I didn't feel elation. I didn't feel guilt. I felt a profound, terrifying, and liberating clarity. The war was over. All that was left was to announce the victory. For the next week, I moved through my house like a guest. I packed a suitcase with essentials and hid it in the back of my closet. I made copies of all the important documents. I was calm, focused. The storm inside me had passed, leaving a quiet, resolute landscape. On D-Day, I woke up before the sun. The house was still and silent. I made coffee just like I did every morning. When Alex came into the kitchen, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, I was sitting at the table, a simple manila folder in front of me. "Morning," he mumbled, reaching for a mug. "Alex," I said, my voice perfectly even. "We need to talk." He stopped, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. He looked at me, truly looked at me, for the first time in what felt like years. He saw the folder, his brow furrowed in confusion. I just slid the folder across the smooth surface of the table. He picked it up hesitantly, his eyes scanning the top page. I watched his face cycle through a series of emotions in a matter of seconds. Confusion, disbelief, panic. "Divorce," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Jonathan, what is this? I don't understand. We can fix this. We can go to counseling." "There's nothing to fix, Alex," I said, my voice devoid of heat. "It's already broken. It has been for a long time." His hands started to shake. He did exactly what I knew he would do. He fumbled for his phone, his thumbs swiping frantically across the screen. He called his mother. "Mom," he choked out, "you need to get over here. Now. Jonathan he's leaving me." I just sat there and drank my coffee. I had expected this. I had planned for this. Within the hour they arrived. Eleanor and Brenda stormed into my house like a conquering army, their faces etched with fury. Alex was a mess, but they barely spared him a glance. Their focus was entirely on me. "What is the meaning of this?" Eleanor demanded, her voice sharp as broken glass. "After everything we've done for you, welcomed you into our family, this is how you repay us. How ungrateful can you be?" Brenda chimed in, pointing a finger at me. "You think you can just destroy our son's life and walk away?" I stayed silent, letting them exhaust their initial volley of outrage. Finally, Eleanor got to the heart of the matter. The only thing that ever truly mattered to them. "You can't just do this," she snarled, her eyes narrowing. "You're not going to walk out of here with half of our son's money." There it was. Asterisk, our son's money. The money I earned. The life I built. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment, savoring it. I looked from Eleanor's greedy face to Brenda's sneer, and finally to Alex, who stood behind them, pale and speechless, looking to his mother to fight his battle for him, just as he always had. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my coffee. I placed the mug down gently on the table. Then I looked Eleanor dead in the eye. "You're right," I said calmly. "I'm not walking away with half, because there is no liquid marital money to divide." A flicker of confusion crossed her face. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the $850,000 from our investment portfolio." I said, my voice as cold and hard as steel. "I moved it, all of it, into an irrevocable trust controlled by my parents. I did it a week ago." I let the words land. I watched the realization dawn on their faces. The rage in Eleanor's eyes was instantly replaced by a wide-eyed, sputtering panic. Brenda's jaw went slack. Alex looked like he had been physically struck, his face turning an ashen gray. You can't do that," Eleanor shrieked, her voice pitching into a hysterical register. "That's illegal. We'll sue you. We will ruin you." "I've already spoken with my lawyer," I said, cutting her off. "The transfer was completed 7 days before I filed for divorce. It's legally secure. You can try to challenge it, of course. It will cost you a fortune in legal fees, and your chances of winning are almost zero. But you're welcome to try." The greed was naked now, stripped of all pretense. Their concern wasn't for their son's broken marriage. It was for the money, the cruise, the easy life they had planned for themselves on my back. They had lost their golden goose. The pressure finally broke the weakest link. Alex, who had been silent this whole time, finally cracked. But his anger wasn't directed at me. He turned on his mother, his face a mask of dawning horror and betrayal. "This is your fault," he screamed, his voice raw with a pain I'd never heard from him before. "You and Brenda, this is your fault. You never gave him a moment of peace. You criticized everything he did, and I just stood there. I let you do it." The united front shattered. In an instant, they turned on each other like starving wolves. "Don't you dare blame us," Brenda shot back. "You're the one who was too weak to be a husband." "I told you to be nicer to him," Eleanor yelled at Brenda, a frantic edge to her voice. "But you always had to push it." Their bitter, frantic accusations filled the beautiful home I had paid for. It was a symphony of dysfunction. I had lit the fuse, and now I was simply watching the implosion from a safe distance. I stood up from the table. Their screaming faded into background noise. I walked to my closet, retrieved the suitcase I had packed a week ago, and walked back to the front door. They didn't even notice me. They were too busy tearing each other apart, finally facing the consequences of their own toxicity. I opened the door and stepped out into the morning sun. I didn't look back. I just walked away, leaving the wreckage of that family to collapse in on itself. The legal battle for the house was straightforward. My lawyer presented the bank statements, proving the down payment came exclusively from my premarital savings. They were left with a house that was heavily mortgaged and the mountain of legal bills from their failed attempt to claw back the trust money. But my victory wasn't financial. It was the quiet, it was the peace, it was the freedom. 6 months later, I was sitting in my parents' backyard. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. We were having a simple dinner, grilled chicken and salad. My mom was telling a funny story about a neighbor, and my dad was laughing a real deep belly laugh. I looked at them, my real family, and a genuine smile spread across my face. It wasn't a strategy. It wasn't a facade. It was real. I was 35 years old, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt completely at peace. I had lost a husband, but I had reclaimed my life. I was the master of my own fortune, the captain of my own ship. And for the first time in a very long time, the sea was calm.